Morning, Commissioner Bookland. Can you hear us okay?
I can hear you fine. Good morning.
Great. Good morning. We can hear you too. Thanks for joining.
Glad to be here.
Good morning, Austin. Can you hear us okay here in the room?
I sure can. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you great. Thanks for joining.
You got it.
Oh, got it. Okay. Yeah, the ERP. Okay. Oh, my laptop reads 8:59. I guess we have, or the clock reads 9:01. I'll wait a few more seconds. Okay, 9 a.m. Call the meeting of the Madison Metropolitan Sewerage District for Thursday, January 16th of 25 to order. Welcome to all of our guests. So we do have a quorum. We have Commissioner Bookland participating virtually. We have 2 members absent, Commissioner Paulson and Commissioner Rummel. Cassie, would you like to go through the virtual meeting guidance, please?
Good morning, Commissioners, members of the public, and staff. To help us have a smooth meeting, I'm going to review just a few decorum rules for all. While the Commission and staff are in person, we are still offering a Zoom option so members of the public can attend. If you are attending virtually and would like to speak, you can do so during appearances by the public. As a reminder, this meeting is being recorded and streamed live on YouTube, and the public chat has been disabled, but you can still send messages to the host if need be. Finally, Commissioners, please use your microphones while speaking and make sure your voice is directed towards the mic. When you are not speaking, please ensure your mic is off so others can utilize the mic. As a reminder, only 3 of the table mics can be live at a time. Also, please state your name before speaking for those who may be joining us via Zoom. Those are the decorum rules of the District Commission. Thank you for following them, and let's have a great meeting.
Okay, thank you, Cassie. Do we have any announcements? No announcements? That will take us to appearances by the public. Is there anybody from the public that wishes to appear? I don't see any hands up in the room or on Zoom, so we'll move on. So we have the consent calendar. We have up through A through I. However, on C, we are going to be removing at the request of the City of Madison the last sanitary sewer extension plan, which was 2008 Winona Way. So that will be removed or pulled from the agenda at their request. Do we have a motion, or before we get to the motion, do we have any questions on any of the items in the consent calendar? Patrick.
Thank you, Commissioner Lytle speaking. On item D, I was looking at the televised and clean pricing, and I note that there's a fairly significant increase from our costs from the previous 2 years, even though our estimated length is higher than previous years' estimations. So I didn't know if anyone had some background on that, something being overall with this type of service, or if there's any factors driving that up from a unit rate standpoint.
Eric.
I will try to answer that question for you. If you actually look at the table a few years ago, the prices were actually higher. So in this case, I would not necessarily say that the prices jumped as much as we've had 2 good years. So that's how I would answer that question for you.
Okay. And that will, anybody else have anything? Seeing none, do we have a motion to approve the consent calendar items A through I with the exclusion of the last bullet under item C?
So moved, Commissioner Meyer.
Motion by Commissioner Meyer, second by?
This is Commissioner Freeze, I'll second.
Second by Commissioner Freeze. Okay, all those in favor say aye. Aye. And any opposed? None, motion carries. Thank you. That will move us to Commissioner Officer elections. Bill?
Bill Walker, Deputy Executive Director. I don't actually have much to say since you know what the officers are, you know how elections work. I will just point out that the CAR does summarize sort of the duties of the 3 officers and also adds something that we learned recently, which is that the roles of President and Secretary sign municipal obligations under state law, and it occurred to us that no one should be on those offices if for any reason they are unable to do that, because that is a function that cannot be delegated to any other commissioner. This came up when we were thinking about a Clean Water Fund signing with Commissioner Meyer. So very unlikely to ever be an issue, but we put it in as a note. If for whatever reason anyone considering one of those officer positions feels that they're not able to sign a municipal obligation, they should not be in that role. We put 2 options in the CAR. One is to take care of the elections today, and the other is to hold a period of time open. A recommendation, we don't care one way or the other. They're your officers. That's all I have to say.
Okay, thank you, Bill. What's the Commission's pleasure?
Current officers, are you guys willing to continue?
Everyone's saying yes, and I'll jump on the mic and say, as Vice President, I'm happy to continue. I think it's been great working with Tom. We've had a lot of big things this last year that were out of the ordinary. Maybe we'll be back to ordinary this year, although I shouldn't even say it because that means I'll jinx it. But it's been great, and I'd be happy to continue, and excited about the new direction now with Eric on board and all the rest. So I'm certainly happy to keep serving that capacity.
I am too. I think like to finish through this whole onboarding process and everything.
I would as well, especially considering that the policy says that the Secretary can delegate those responsibilities to staff except for signing the obligations.
Well, then I'll just make a comment. I want to thank, especially Tom and Ezra for all the work on the, Tom, I've told you this many times, right, and privately, but the work you did through that executive search was a lot. So thank you. Ezra, you as well. You've historically done all the reviews and stuff, which, takes forever, and Brad as well. I appreciate. So I am happy to make a motion to keep, right word is to keep the existing slate of positions for the
Commissioner Clark, I'll second that, and I agree with all the sentiment from Commissioner Freed.
I agree as well. I think it's I appreciate all the hard work everybody's done, so yeah, thank you, everybody. Thank you, Tom and Ezra and Brad. Appreciate it.
Mike's not on. Thanks. We had the aye votes. So, okay. I'll ask it again. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
And any opposed? No. Motion carries. Okay. Sorry I didn't have my mic on. I was looking at the screen. Okay. That will take us to, so we continue with the current officers. That will take us to the approved changes to the commission policy book and related commissioner terms, roles, and references. Amanda, you're going to lead that off?
I am. Good morning, everyone. Amanda Wagner, Communications and Public Affairs Director here at the district. So this topic is a couple changes that we are proposing for the commission policy book, covering 3 different policies, none of which should be a surprise at this point since we've kind of hinted at them. So the first would be, and Bill had just mentioned this in his lead up to the introduction for the officer elections. So a few things we identified in reviewing statute, and we wanted to update the CP2G, President's Role Commission Policy, and CP2I, Secretary's Role in the Commission Policy Book to reflect these things that we identified and learned. And so the updates to these policies are pretty straightforward. One was simply to note that they are required by state statute. That was not previously in the policy, and we felt it was important to codify that. And the second was, as Bill had mentioned, updating them that these 2 roles are responsible for assigning municipal obligations for the district, and that this responsibility cannot be delegated. So those 2 policies, the changes are basically word for word the same, minus the words president and secretary. So the third policy that we would like to make edits to, and we did signal this here in the fall when we had turnover in commission positions during the middle of the budget process. So our current commission policy is that terms start and end on October 15th. And on October 15th, new ones start, it runs October 15th for 3 years until October 14th. And this traditionally falls right within our budget period. So we are simply proposing about moving those term dates back just 1 month. So it's a November 15th, 3 years, November 14th. We also went through a pretty significant exercise reaching out to our 3 appointing authorities, the City of Madison, Dane County Cities and Villages Association, as well as the Dane County Towns Association, and understanding their processes, any sort of procedures, ordinances, rules that they have in place regarding appointments, and making sure that those were reflected in the policy, which is CP20, Officer Elections Commission Terms and Continuity. To that end, because we did learn so much, we are also proposing the addition of a new ATT attachment. Those are documents that we create and tuck at the end of the commission policy book where we just need further discussion or clarity on things. So we have also drafted a new ATT5, appointing authority processes, that codifies all the information we learned, as well as includes references to ordinances, state statute, et cetera. So those are the three policy, and then just one sort of housekeeping, and that is throughout the commission policy book, just changing the term chief engineer and director across the board to executive director to reflect the change in title of the leadership of the organization. So just looking for approval from the commission on these proposed changes. In the packet, I did include a markup version as well as final versions, minus the entire book with the change from chief engineer and director to executive director. So I'm happy to answer any questions that you have on this.
Okay, thank you, Amanda. Anybody have any questions? None? Patrick.
Thank you, Commissioner Lytle. I see both in Bill's comment on the previous agenda item and this one, the reference to who ever serves in the president and secretary role, they must be able to sign municipal obligations. I know we're trying to be polite, but what types of situations would preclude someone filling that role on the commission?
Go ahead. You go ahead.
I was going, so not to call out Commissioner Meyer here, but for instance, working with the DNR and signing clean water fund loans would be an example of that.
Makes sense. Thank you.
Okay, any further questions? I have one. Did you inform the owner or customer communities that we were making the change from October to November? And they're okay with that?
We have previously discussed that, yeah.
Okay. Seeing no further discussion, do we have a motion to approve the changes to the policy book as outlined in the packet, which includes then changing chief engineer and director to executive director?
I'll make that motion. This is Commissioner Meyer.
Motion by Commissioner Meyer, second by?
I'll second it, Murphy.
Second by Commissioner Murphy. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None. Motion carries. Okay. That will now take us to the update on the for our project enterprise resource planning implementation. Dana Reed is going to lead this off.
Thank you. Good morning, Commission. I'm Dana Reed, Director of Enterprise Services. Sit down more. How's that? Better? Okay. And I'm joined virtually today by Austin Nichols. And Austin is a senior consultant at Barry Dunn, and he'll be presenting as well today. So I'll let him do a little bit more of an introduction when we get to him. Today's presentation is going to cover Q3 and Q4 progress from 2024. A lot of activity in the last 2 quarters around the ERP project, including development of an ERP strategic plan. We also did a request for information, or RFI, and from that we invited 8 vendors to demo their products and for us to ask questions of them. In November, we did joint requirement planning sessions, and this is with subject matter experts across the district. And from those, we developed the requirements that we published in the request for proposal. That RFP is published right now, and we will get responses back this month for evaluation. So at the end, we'll talk a little bit about next steps and, of course, answer questions as well.
Thank you, Dana. Good morning, everyone. Can you hear me okay in the room?
Yes.
Right. As Dana mentioned, my name is Austin Nichols. I am a senior consultant with Barry Dunn, the district's consulting partner for the Enterprise Resource Planning System Selection Project. That is me on the far right there when our team was on site back in May of last year for our project kickoff and fact-finding meetings. I am the project manager for the project, where I serve as the main point of contact between the district and Barry Dunn project teams, and oversee the development of all of our in-scope tasks and deliverables to make sure we stay on task and on schedule. Happy to be here today to provide an update for Q3 and Q4 progress on the project. I want to start here, just high-level overview of the project. Last time we provided an update back in August. We were just wrapping up the needs assessment phase of the project. As Dana mentioned, a lot of progress in the fall. Developing the functional and technical requirements, drafting and releasing the request for proposal to the ERP vendor community. As Dana mentioned, we are now preparing to evaluate proposals and ultimately select a new ERP vendor. Looking ahead, I like to say the real work begins there in the blue with the implementation phase. That's where we will kick off the implementation activities to configure, test, and train on the new system. As Dana mentioned, through Q3 and 4, we developed an approach to manage your enterprise-wide change for the ERP implementation. We'll get into more detail around what that deliverable looked like. We did facilitate those vendor outreach sessions with 7 of the ERP vendors, facilitated joint requirement planning sessions. Again, we'll explain a little bit more about what is involved there. Ultimately, I think the key statistic here is that we developed 2,586 requirements across 17 functional areas there at the district. And just to give you an idea of the scope of this project and all the activities that this system will ultimately support for the district. And then we did develop an RFP with district procurement team and release that to the vendor community. So I mentioned the ERP strategic plan and request for information summary results. So coming out of the needs assessment phase, we performed some market research. The vehicle for that was that request for information, or RFI, that we developed and issued to the ERP vendor community. The structure of the RFI, you'll see here these bullet points, really just to inform. The objective here was to inform future project activities, making sure that we're aligned with scope moving forward. Availability of modules, those are items like, a purchasing module, project accounting, time and attendance, payroll, just to get an idea of what type of systems are available and what type of functionality is available in these systems. Kind of taking to the second bullet there, we included some high-level kind of critical requirements to see how these systems could provide the needed functionality there at the district. We asked some questions related to the vendor's implementation approach. Really key stats that we gathered there were, what are the resource efforts for district staff to implement the proposed systems, as well as recommended phasing and an overall timeline. Again, really is an input into this resource planning for the district. We also asked for high-level cost estimates and as well as some informational questions, again, really helping us refine the scope of what's available in these systems as it relates to district operations. So we did get really good response rate to the request for information. I just wanted to show that, that I think it really shows the interest that the vendor community has partnering with the district. We received 11 responses. These are the vendors that responded, as well as their proposed software solutions. Key item I did want to highlight, you'll see some of the vendor names with the asterisk. That is a service provider, or what we call a system implementer, that responded to the RFI with a proposed software. So that would be the vendor would be the one providing the professional services related to the implementation, right, configuration, testing, and training of the proposed technology. Which, if we look at number 2, App Associates is an example of a professional services provider that would propose the ERP system called Oracle Cloud Fusion. So really just setting that expectation that you'll see a variety of different types of proposals and partnerships through this initiative. Drawing from information we gathered through the needs assessment phase, as well as the responses to the request for information, we developed an ERP strategic plan, really a roadmap and some recommendations, as well as key considerations for the district as the project team and district leadership plans for ultimately selecting, purchasing, and implementing a new system. Really the ERP, the RFI being that market research, as well as drawing from information that we have, just working with similar organizations across the country. We kind of had these two key recommendations. One was to move forward with the selection and implementation of a new ERP solution to replace the functionality currently supported by the existing system, Oracle WAM, and related third-party systems. And then two, just knowing the involved stakeholders and the impact this project will have on the district, is to adopt and apply a formalized change management methodology and develop an OCM, or organizational change management team, prior to implementation of the project kickoff. That report is available and certainly has more detail related to these recommendations if you were want to review that. Building on the RFI and that market research, our next activity were those vendor outreach and information sessions. We invited the vendors that responded to the request for information to provide high-level presentations to include an overview of the company, the markets that these organizations serve, and then demonstrate their proposed software functionality. Really key objectives here: educate staff, so educate district staff on capabilities of these systems in the modern ERP marketplace. The idea is that we would use that information as a key input into the requirement development process. And then kind of another benefit of these presentations is to generate awareness in the ERP vendor community of the upcoming opportunity to partner with the district. So really productive week of presentations and really set the stage for our next activity, which were the joint requirement planning sessions. And so a really involved exercise here with a lot of district staff and subject matter experts. I think if I'll jump to the bottom there, that we ultimately developed 2,586 functional and technical requirements for a future system. You'll see all of the functional areas involved or in scope for the district. Kind of two categories: what we consider like financial related functional areas, your accounts payable, accounts receivable, budgeting, accounting, those items, as well as what we call human capital management or human resource related functionality, from recruiting, time and attendance, payroll, learning management. So really full scope of a functionality that the future system will support there at the district. We packaged those requirements into a request for proposal. Just a little bit of the structure of the RFP specifications. That's the scope of the district, right? Of the functionality that the district is looking to procure. Included some instructions for the vendor, the evaluation criteria, the timeline, and then a set of appendices to support the RFP. The Appendix C is the technical proposal. That is the document that the vendors will complete as part of their proposal. The functional Appendix D, the functional technical requirements, that's the 2,500 requirements that we developed with district staff that each vendor will be required to respond to if their systems can provide that critical functionality. And then two appendices to including cost information related to their proposal, both one-time cost, right, to implement the system, but also that ongoing cost to support and maintain the software. And Dana, I will pass it back to you to discuss the evaluation team and next steps.
Yeah, thank you, Austin. So I wanted to give a shout out to this evaluation team. I guess they're not really volunteers. They were kind of voluntold, but this is a lot of work because there's 2,500 requirements. We expect probably 8 to 10 responses to the RFP, which means this team has thousands and thousands of pages to evaluate in the month of February. So you can see who we have here, and we have a kickoff later today, actually, with the evaluation team to orient ourselves. And then we have next steps. So we talked about the RFP. In February and March is when the evaluation committee will be doing their work. They'll score And then we'll identify a short list for vendors to bring back for demonstrations. We're looking at, I mean, we won't know until we evaluate the proposals, but we will probably have 2 to 4 that we bring in for demos in April. Those demonstrations are 2.5 days per vendor. So we'll have a couple weeks in April of demonstrations here. They'll be in this room, and all staff will be invited to come in for sessions that are pertinent to their role in the organization. They'll also be recorded. And then after that, the evaluation team will do round 2 scoring and identify our preferred vendor. After that, we'll begin contract negotiations in May with the assistance of our legal counsel. And I would just say also that this project is still on schedule. So it's been a lot of work, but we're on schedule. With that, Austin and I will take questions.
Okay, thank you. Anybody have any questions? I have a question. During your evaluation or when you put the proposal together, did you ask about the proprietary nature of their processes and if it's, are some like choose to have more of an open source or not?
Oh, with the software?
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you want to answer that, Austin?
Yeah, so we ask a lot of technical related questions as part of the RFP, just to understand the technology that supports the systems, the type of integrations and interfaces. So we know the district is going to retain, certain systems that we expect this system to integrate with. And so from a technical perspective, yes, we do ask a lot about the technology and the base of the system that they propose or systems that they propose.
Okay, Ken?
Commissioner Clark, Dana, is there any type of guarantee that can be put into the language of the contract that we're not going to experience project creep for another $1 million after the $6 million spent?
Yes. But I think also part of that will be retaining Barry Dunn to provide project oversight so that we have another entity really providing that oversight of the vendor and watching for scope creep, watching for change orders, but we can also do things with our contract negotiations also. Did you want to add anything, Austin?
No, I think you nailed it. We'll have those terms clearly defined in the contract. What what are those deliverables? What is the fee schedule, and what are the items that would constitute a change order?
I think, let me add one more thing. A part of that is for the district to also not introduce scope creep. So for us not to introduce customizations in an effort to kind of recreate how we do things today in a system that has been built off industry standards and best practices. So some of that will really be part of the change management.
Yeah, that's a great point. I've also found that the homework is done up front by the vendor, submitting the bid and handling the project. It helps eliminate the end project adjustments needed, those types of things.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and as part of our services for the implementation, we'll have a governance structure internally at the district that those types of key decisions, whether it is adding to the scope or perhaps reducing the scope, would go through a formal review by the steering committee and ultimately making those type of contract decisions.
Okay. Hopefully all the time and effort that's been put in, we're not going to be having the district starting to change its ideas and introduce scope creep. You'll get, I think, a very upset commissioner. One more question. Do you have any idea how long, many years you can expect this to last with normal upgrades or?
Oh, at least 10 years, possibly more. So this is a long-term investment. I mean, obviously our current system, Oracle WAM, we've had 20-some years, so maybe not that long, but next time, but at least a 10-year investment.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else have any questions? Nope. Okay, so we would probably see the approval of the contract in May?
I would probably say June or July.
June or
depending on how long contract negotiations take.
And you had a number of vendors there, but you're expecting some to drop out and get probably 8 to 10.
Yeah, Austin, I think we've talked about 5 to 10 is probably what we're expecting.
I think that's about right.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Let's see. That moves us to the study session, Executive Director Onboarding. What I want to do is we're going to have Mike Lipsky. Will do the presentation on this. But I want to also, then we're just going to move seamlessly probably into item E, consider and take action on the subcommittee, because the subcommittee did talk about part of the onboarding process today and what we're going to do for performance evaluation. So I'll update the commission on that, and then we'll ask for consent to move forward with that, with the idea that the subcommittee came up with. So, you want to take it over, Mike?
Sure. Mike Lipsky, HR Director, and Amy Deming, Organizational Development Specialist, will also be presenting. We get the presentation for study session. There we go. Awesome. Thank you. So this is a study session on the onboarding of our new executive director. We're here at the request of the commission. If you remember back in November, there were questions by the commission as far as what onboarding would look like. And at that time, President Hovell had asked if we could come in December to talk about it, to which I said, well, once we know who the executive director is, we could probably do a much better job of presenting on what an onboarding plan would look like, because onboarding for an internal candidate, while there's a lot of similarities, there's also some differences as it relates to an internal versus an external candidate. So we are here today, now that we know our new executive director is Eric Dundee, to talk about what onboarding is looking like for Eric here at the district. So the purpose of today's presentation is just to talk about the importance of onboarding generally, then focusing on what is the commission's role with regards to onboarding the executive director as the supervisor of that person. We have some questions around what external support the commission needs for onboarding and first year review of the new executive director, and then ultimately approving the commission onboarding plan that was attachment 1 to the CAR. So as we move through the presentation, Amy and I will bounce back and forth with regards to these issues.
All right. I'm Amy Deming, Organizational Development Specialist here at the district, and I'll just talk a little bit about the importance of onboarding for executive directors. So onboarding is a evidence-based practice that, oh, it's a pink. One of the primary functions of onboarding is around clarifying the expectations, goals, and priorities for the person that you've hired. So onboarding processes are designed to create touch points to provide that clarification. The sooner you can provide information to an incoming executive and get them support, help them build relationships, the quicker they can deliver on the results that you want. So a good onboarding plan sort of accelerates that time to productivity for someone coming into a new position. When someone comes into a new position, first impressions are everything. The first 90 days often are make or break for an incoming leader, and an onboarding plan can help set someone up to make good relationships, get off in a good way during that critical time period that they're also adjusting to the new role. There's also benefits for the leader coming in. So for Eric, you know, as you're evaluating Eric's fit for the role, Eric is also evaluating the same thing, right? And a good onboarding plan improves their satisfaction in the role, their engagement, makes it more likely that they'll see themselves staying in the role, and ultimately sets them up to be successful long-term, helps build trust both ways. And then finally, it's just a good way to treat people coming into a new position. So the commission spent considerable time, effort in choosing a great candidate for the role. And it can be tempting to just sort of be like, all right, our work is done. Take it from here, Eric. But investing some time to sort of continue to invest in that person's success is just a good way to treat someone coming into a leadership role. A few potential challenges that I'll call out related to onboarding, and then also as you think about evaluation and things like that for a new executive director, particularly someone who's internally promoted. So one of the biggest things that I'll call out is when someone is an internal candidate, we tend to just sort of assume that they know all the things. And they do know a lot, especially compared to an external candidate about the organization. But the change in role requires additional knowledge and a shift in perspective in terms of what they knew in their department role. The way that they think about that changes. And so it can be tempting to sort of invest less time in sharing information or to sort of assume that they already know something as commissioners and as staff. We just need to be aware that that's a bias that exists. Eric doesn't know what he doesn't know, and so it just is good to err on the side of sharing information. And you know, if he knows, then he can tell you. There's also a tendency when we promote someone, it's because they're really great at what they do, right? And we can tend to expect them to just immediately be great coming into the role and sort of forget the time that it took them to find their stride in their previous role, and just overlook the time that it takes to learn and acclimate to a new role. Compared to an external person where we tend to give them time to listen, learn, get adjusted. A lot of times with an internal person, we expect them to just sort of immediately take off. And they usually have a quicker time to, get to that point. But we just kind of need to be aware that we may be unrealistic in our expectations of sort of this immediate jumping in. And in the same way that an external candidate would be given time to listen, learn, gather information before jumping, it's good to do that as well for someone internal. Anytime you have someone coming into a new leadership role, they're going to make that role their own. So there may be ways that a previous leader did things that the new leader will do differently, and so that's can be a challenge sometimes, a sort of change for commissioners or the organization as sort of that role is adjusted and renegotiated. And with Eric being internal, there's an added bonus challenge, an opportunity, I guess, as well, related to letting go of the former role, where all of that also has to be sort of renegotiated in a way that someone coming in new wouldn't have that letting go piece as well. So just another thing to be aware of. And then finally, and you may remember this from when the commission was, sitting down thinking about getting ready to hire, right? And what do they want in an executive director? Commissioners didn't all have the same priorities amongst yourselves. And then when you bring in staff and external stakeholders, people prioritize different things. And that is just sort of another challenge to sort of be aware of, is that your own top priority or what you see as most important may not be what other commissioners see as most important, and may be different from staff as well. It just stopped working. Okay. I'll turn it back over to Mike.
All right, back to me. So this next section is just talking specifically about the onboarding and you as commissioners, what your role is with regards to the onboarding process. So again, attached to the car was a document called Commission Onboarding Plan. Part of your role, clarifying expectations and performance goals. So you remember you developed the one-year goals document as part of the recruitment process. That was great. Now you have an executive director. It's time to talk about that document in more detail with Eric and clarify what are your expectations with regards to the goals? Are the timeframes listed with regards to the goals realistic? You know, having those conversations so that way it's really clear for Eric, is he meeting your expectations? We've talked about this multiple times as a commission. Eric is your hire. Eric is your report. It's your responsibility to monitor and evaluate Eric's performance, and we're going to talk about that in more detail in a little bit. Facilitate relationship building. You know, Eric already talked about, you know, clarifying roles, expectations, but, you know, what is the commission's role in facilitating Eric's introduction to owner communities and other external stakeholders? You'll see in a moment there's another column about staff. We also have a role in helping Eric facilitate those relationships, but it's incumbent on all of us to really think about what are those relationships and how can we help Eric set Eric up for success as he's out meeting with owner communities and other groups. And then finally, we're going to ask the commission to make some decisions around, you know, executive coaching and how Eric's performance is actually formally going to be evaluated. And so then again, onboarding is not just commission's responsibility. We as staff also have a role to play with regards to Eric's onboarding. So you'll see the attachment 2 is a full onboarding plan that not only outlines commission roles and responsibilities, but different things that staff is doing with regards to helping Eric. One of those things is putting together this onboarding plan. Second, staff is going to be responsible for providing some of those briefings and background materials. As Amy mentioned, you know, we're not just going to assume that Eric knows everything about every single issue that's happening here at the district. Rather, you know, directors are going to have briefings with Eric to talk about, here are the things that are going on in our department. Here's what's important. Here's where we need your role and support. And that role and support might look different in Eric's role as executive director than it did in Eric's previous roles. So again, just having those conversations will help reset those expectations and help Eric understand, oh, this is where I need to be involved with regards to each of these different initiatives. The third bullet point, as I mentioned, staff also has a role in facilitating those relationships. And then finally, again, just assisting in navigating culture and processes. So, you know, for instance, talking about the Employee Leadership Council, you know, Eric definitely has familiarity with that in his role as O&M director, district principal engineer, but now that he's the executive director, that role and perspective is different. And so, you know, as the HR director, I'm going to be talking to Eric about that and providing support. And so that's just one example where, you know, staff is going to be assisting in helping Eric make that transition. So then, as we talk about proposed commission touch points with regards to the onboarding process, so this is really focusing in on what can you as the commission do to help provide that support. So President Hovels talked previously about how he and Vice President Meyer, and now that they're reelected, will continue in those roles, providing support to Eric after their biweekly agenda-setting conversations. So that'll be a regular opportunity for them to check in with Eric on goals and the progress that's being made. However, as Amy mentioned, you know, everybody has different expectations with regards to Eric's role in this position. So one of the things that we're recommending in the onboarding plan is that Eric have one-on-one meetings with every commissioner just to talk about, you know, what you're looking for out of the executive director and where you see Eric having a great impact. So, you know, hopefully, assuming the commission agrees that those are good ideas, those meetings will be scheduled and Eric will have those one-on-ones. But then it's really important, again, for Eric to be engaging with the commission as a whole. So as we talked about that first year goals document, the recommendation is to have monthly closed sessions with the commission around Eric's performance and really focusing on clarifying those expectations around the first year goals. And that's also an opportunity for commission to be providing Eric with feedback as it relates to performance, more so than just, hearing from Tom and Ezra. Part of the commission policy book is those quarterly dashboards. So Eric will be taking over providing that information to the commission. And then looking at an interim 6-month review of Eric in a closed session, and there was conversation in the subcommittee around what this could look like, as well as that annual performance evaluation. So multiple touch points for the commission in making sure that Eric can be successful transitioning into this role.
Right, so the next piece of this is just sort of thinking about what external support the commission can take advantage of to support them in the onboarding. So you'll note from the CAR that staff recommends executive coaching as part of the onboarding process. Just to kind of level set a little around, what executive coaching entails. So an executive coach, generally, they're focused on supporting an executive in refining their strategic thinking as they navigate a leadership transition. That's just kind of in a very general sense how executive coaches tend to approach their work. An executive coach provides an external perspective to an incoming executive. It can be lonely at the top, and having someone to discuss, different goals and challenges and get an external perspective from can be really invaluable for a leader at any point, but especially coming into a new role. And then executive coaching is, it's client-driven. It's focused on action planning toward the client's goals, in this case, toward Eric's goals in this position. Coaching is, it's not mentoring, so a coaching relationship, a mentor would be someone who's, potentially more senior in a role or something like that. An executive coach, it's generally kind of more of a partnership. It's not counseling, it's not therapy or things like that. And it's also not consulting or advising. When you bring a challenge to a coach, generally they will help you sort of think through the challenge, think through the options, think through who you may need to talk to or what kind of process you may need to use to make a decision. And, you make the decision from there, as opposed to a consultant or an advisor that you bring a challenge to them and they would present you with a recommendation. So just kind of wanted to do a little bit of that level setting in case you haven't had experience with coaching, that's kind of the parameters generally of a coaching relationship. This also kind of affects what kind of external feedback the commission may expect. So an executive coach can, with the commission being sort of the sponsor of the coaching, they can provide progress updates, but those progress updates would be developed in a way that also maintains confidentiality in the coaching conversations and relationship. An executive coach may gather information from direct reports and other people, similar to sort of the, evaluation process the commission has used in the past. But the goal is a little different in the sense that an executive coach is gathering that information to support coaching, to sort of identify strengths and areas of opportunity, as opposed to kind of an evaluative approach to gathering that feedback. And then an executive coach is sort of unlikely to provide direct feedback on performance because that's just not really within the scope of that role. This is a little different from when the commission engages with an external facilitator for evaluation specifically, where the external facilitator, they would be gathering information as well, but with the goal of it being evaluative and the external facilitator can deliver that performance feedback and would deliver it generally probably more directly, but they may lack some organizational context depending on who it is. So some of the support options, the options that are laid out in the CAR that was presented to the commission, these are not all mutually exclusive, right? The commission could choose multiples, but there's the staff recommendation to hire an executive coach. And then there's also a couple of options related to evaluation. And at this point here, I'm going to kind of turn it a little bit over to President Hovell, because this was something that was discussed at length in subcommittee, and there were some recommendations that came out of subcommittee related to this.
So I thought it best that the subcommittee discussed this morning and came up with a recommendation to the full commission. So one thing I want to say is we had a very in-depth discussion this morning as to, you know, internal candidate has been chosen versus an external candidate, and that kind of changed our thinking on some things. For example, 6-month review process. So let me go through what we decided. First of all, Raftellus had an ability for us to have, for I think it was $9,000, that they would do an evaluation process at 6 months, and that evaluation process would involve one-on-one meetings with the commission, would involve a self-evaluation by Eric as the executive director, then it would provide a report and facilitate a discussion between the executive director and the commission. There was that not included in that was any outreach to staff or anything like that. The subcommittees decided not to take Raftellus up on that aspect. One of the reasons is that staff pointed out there's somewhat of a built-in bias that Raftellus to tell you that, oh, your candidate's good, no, we don't have to do another executive director search. Second thing is, Eric's very familiar with the district. He's an in-house hire. You know, if we have problems, they're more likely to start coming up after 6 months rather than being a kind of a culture fit type of thing. So, but what we did do is we're going to be recommending going back to the past and forming a performance review subcommittee again. And it would be 2 or 3 commissioners probably of the commission, and they would be tasked with several different things that I will lay out. First of all, they will be tasked with working with staff will be working on a 6-month survey, and the subcommittee will be tasked with deciding on the scope and the breadth of that survey. Intent is basically to take the questions from last year's survey, just transpose so you can kind of compare an apples to apples type of thing. We're not reinventing the wheel. Keep it very objective. Try to limit, not really have any space for, you know, broad opinions or anything. So the subcommittee would decide on the scope, who should be contacted, and so forth. The idea of that, we would then have that completed at 6 months. At the same time, there'll be an RFP for executive coach. It would be developed, and the subcommittee would be the contact person for staff on that RFP, and decide at what points you would wish subcommittee or commission contact or points with the executive coach. The idea there is that the executive coach would then come on board probably in July, kind of that 6-month period. The idea being is probably at 6 months, we will have probably had completed the one-on-one meetings with the commissioners, that it will have probably completed some of, he plans on meeting with some of the owner communities, or most of them, which is a lot. That's 24, right? And so meetings with those and meetings with staff at that point, so we kind of get an idea of what the lay of the land is. that. Then we will have the other thing, that executive coach will be recommended by Eric, approved if necessary by the commission, because they have to have that relationship. We want Eric to be kind of the decider on the executive coach. Then another aspect is for the subcommittee to review the personnel policy that we have for the executive director review process, if there's any changes they want to make. And then finally, the big thing probably is for the subcommittee to work on and develop an RFP for an ongoing long-term annual performance evaluation of the executive director. So that would occur basically like in January. But we're looking for something that's more than just 1 year. We're looking for like years 1, 2, 3, or whatever the subcommittee would come up with some kind of decision on that. So we have that same party doing it over the course of a few-year period. Then they develop a relationship with the executive director, the different staff levels. We saw that with BJ, right? It took 2 years for him to develop that good relationship. So that's basically what we've laid out. So it's kind of a combination of these different things. And if the commission agrees with that approach, I'm not thinking that we're going to appoint the subcommittee today, but maybe wait till next meeting or the meeting thereafter. And so if anybody's interested in serving on it, please let me know, and then not going to be at a meeting, I can put your name forward, serve on that subcommittee. So then that subcommittee would work with the performance evaluation process, a year from now. Or we may have to change depending on what appointments occur. So, anybody have any questions on that? Do you want me to go through it again, or you kind of have that down? Give you time to process it. So basically, we're not taking Raftellus up on the 6-month evaluation. We'll go through a process of hiring an executive coach starting probably in July, on the idea that we know at that point what work Eric may need coached on. They'll decide on a questionnaire for whatever breadth they decide in terms of the internal organization and the commissioners respond to, and based on probably past questionnaires that we've had. Review the personnel policy on the executive director performance review, and then create an RFP and be involved with that selection process, make a recommendation to the commission or that party to, depending how many years they decide. That one thing we did talk about is we didn't like the person there being out after 1 year. Ken, it looks like you have a
3-year agreement for the executive coach. Is that what you?
Well, we were thinking 1-year agreement for the executive coach and a 3-year agreement on and the annual performance evaluation.
Got it. I think the executive coach, whether that person stays involved or that position stays involved with the district or not, who decides that? The executive director or the
I would think
commission?
Well, partially the executive director, but I also think he would want to be informing us as the commission.
Okay.
And the main goal is to make Eric successful in his job.
Yeah, agreed. And I guess as a commissioner, I think the decision for a period of time with the executive coach would be up to the executive director. If Eric wants that individual or that thought process, that process to continue to be involved or not. Versus the commission dictating that onto that position.
Prior executive director used an executive coach. I don't even think we had any say in the hiring or anything of that. I don't even think we approved it. Just did it. So, yeah, I think there would be conversations with Eric during the performance evaluation process about how he's moving and so forth.
If the executive coach is bringing any benefit to the
Right,
to the
organization.
table, or are they
Yeah.
just a buffer in between the management?
Yep.
Executive director.
Greg?
Yeah, this is Commissioner Free. So I have just one question with regard to the performance evaluation. So, thankfully, I did not serve on that subcommittee, that Ezra and others did. But that process was, from the outside, extremely onerous, and long. And I'm wondering, so in hiring, are they gonna be proposing a different method or a different approach as well, and then staying on for 3 years to do that? 'Cause from a sustainability perspective, I don't see how you could do that every single year. I mean, Ezra spent, well, not just Ezra, but I mean, Sarah, and I can't remember who else was on that.
Greg, Grant.
Yeah.
Okay, so what we did the last 2 years is, BJ Rogers was basically the go-between for a lot of that. So it became, wouldn't you say, Ezra, was less onerous on the subcommittee? Much less. So BJ did the contact with the directors and the commission members, things like that. And so then that report was then put together, and that's, when I was contacted. I'm not gonna get into that, but things took a different tack. So I think that's the purpose here, is to hire somebody would do what, like, and BJ may be one that we hire. I don't know. We're gonna open it up with an RFP that person will do that's the purpose of the RFP, to lay out that legwork that they would do, report maybe to the subcommittee, maybe to the commission or the commission president or whatever. So it really takes out all those meetings that we, over the years, the different subcommittees, and I agree, it's a lot of burnout, because we were meeting with the ELC, we were meeting with the directors and stuff like that, a lot of meetings. And so BJ kind of, that's the purpose of that role, is to kind of supplant that and make it more efficient for the overall commission.
So that sounds great. My only other question with regard to that is that RFP to also, I'll say, refine what that process is gonna, what that review would look like, and not just implement basically the same thing, but maybe look at that process again.
Right, and that's why we're having them look at the policy before they do the RFP, revise the policy, and maybe then they come up with kind of what their steps they want to include in the RFP, include that in the policy.
Just to be clear, that's the subcommittee that would be doing that.
That's the subcommittee. Yep. Anybody else have any questions or comments? I don't know if we want a motion. The subcommittee made a motion and approved this process. Do we want to do that here at the commission? Or do you want to just, everybody kind of give a thumbs up? I don't know what you think is needed at this point. I probably wouldn't. So can we get a motion if there's, can we get a motion on this?
I'd be happy to move approval of, the subcommittee's recommendation on the review process.
Okay.
Murphy.
Motion by Commissioner Murphy to recommend the subcommittee's annual, process for the executive director position. Do we have a second?
Commissioner Clark, I'll second that.
Second by Commissioner Clark. Okay, any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Well, Beth's still there or not? Okay. That's the only report we have from the subcommittee. So the hiring subcommittee that we had will now disband. And then probably next meeting or the meeting thereafter, we'll look for anybody volunteers. What was the term you used for the, for the performance? I'm trying to think of the term that you used. No, who was it that, Dana, what was it? Voluntold. Voluntold to serve on the next, the performance evaluation subcommittee.
And then
Anything else you guys have to cover?
just real quick, so, we talked about the evaluation process specifically, but we have those broader elements in the onboarding plan, and that particular, document related to the commission. Just any other comments, thoughts, specifically, the monthly closed sessions with Eric, one-on-ones with the commissioners, like, just any thoughts, feedback with regard to that plan, or if the commission is good with that, then that's how we will work with Eric and proceed.
I think the schedule has the first meeting that we'll have, monthly meeting, actually next meeting. That's, it fits best with the agenda scheduling. If I remember right, was that correct? Yeah. So I see most of those being kind of a discussion between the commission and Eric, and how he's moving forward. Patrick?
Yeah, Commissioner Lytle, I think the only explanation or correction I'd suggest is a 3-month informal evaluation sounds like kind of an unnecessary step given the closed sessions and the 6th evaluation. But other people were getting a feeling that something, really important would have to happen at that 3-month mark.
Yeah, because the process we laid out really doesn't have the formal evaluation for a year. So I'm thinking that there'll be, it'd be a 3-month check-in, and then 6 months we would do probably more of an informal evaluation. Because we'll have the survey results somewhere around that point in time, and that can help inform us. We'll probably be starting the executive coaching, and that can be a good conversation as to, make sense?
Yeah, I'll just chime in quick. I think the monthly closed sessions are really great, and those in a way have that sort of informal check-in function. So I agree with Patrick. We could probably, we don't need to enumerate in such bold, lettering a 3-month check-in. That's maybe not necessary. And then it all nests in or fits in nicely with everything else we've been talking about. 6 months, reaching out and doing a bit of a 360-degree review, and then with some staff involvement, and then the annual process that we're going to launch. I think it all fits nicely together. So yeah, feeling good about it.
Yeah, so my question for you is talking about monthly closed sessions. Can you elaborate on, are you thinking this is every month, the first 3 months, the first 6 months, on your duration? I know I had my thoughts on what that would be, but I'm interested to hear what the commission.
My thinking was it'd be the first 2 to 3 months, and then I think the schedule we had identified, it would be the first 3 months, and then going to 6 months in a year. But the year would be the very formal one, because we will have hopefully that person who will be doing the evaluation. Does that make sense?
Yes, that makes sense. That would put, for me, just for the commissioners to understand, is that would mean that by the 3 months, so that 90-day period would be, we'd be finishing the first year goals, kind of making sure we know exactly what those are and where those are going.
Yep.
Thank you.
Seeing your progress, yeah. Like I said, some of those you may already have, of those first year goals you probably already completed. Like by 3 months, maybe the one-on-one meeting. I suggested, Eric, that you may wish to have some of those meetings depending on attendance, before or after a commission. Okay, you guys all done? Okay, well, thank you, everybody. Let's see, that takes us to the Executive Director's Report. Oh, I want to thank Beth and Ezra for serving on, and Sarah too, for serving on the Executive Director Search Subcommittee, which has now been disbanded as of today. Thank you for all your hard work. Yeah. Okay, so that will take us to Eric, the Executive Director update.
Thank you. So I just wanted to give you guys kind of an update after the first 10 days. It's been a long 10 days, but lots of good things. One thing that you may or may not have noticed is just in this room for commission, Bill Walker is going to continue to sit in his seat. I'm going to continue to sit in my seat. What does that mean invisibly? It means that Bill Walker, along with Cassie, are going to maintain commission process and workflow. So there's, at least for the short term, maybe even long term, that is a duty, I'll call it a duty, that Bill will be conducting at all times. You know, there's other things that I see myself needing to do for priorities, and Bill has done a great job at that, so why not let him continue those duties? So if you have things for the commission, you know, obviously working through Cassie and Bill will be that. Speaking of my former duties, we talked about that a little bit earlier about the worry that I wouldn't give away those duties. Well, I have already. Alan Grooms and Eric Rare have graciously accepted some interim duties here as I transition to be executive director. They will still be my direct reports for the time being, but they will be taking on the duties of the O&M director position. The district principal engineer position will not carry forward in any way. I'll just be handling that decision-making as I had in the past. Other things, conducted a plant meeting this week, and Commissioner Hovell attended that and presented, and then I also presented my commitments, priorities, and culture for the district. That went well. I'm happy to report that we actually had a record number of RSVPs for that, and we had a full house. As a joke, I didn't see anybody asleep, so that was a great thing, and they were engaged, which was good. If Commissioner Hovell afterwards has feedback on that, feel free to reach out to him. I consider that a success. I am planning on meeting with the ELC in February just to do an introductory conversation with them on how they want to work together. I see myself going to the ELC meetings every month, but it's employee choice. They can kick me out after 10 minutes. They can have me stay. We can work together on topics in that way. So working on that. As you've heard it multiple times now, commission one-on-ones. Looking to set those up, as many of those as I can in the next couple months. I am trying to reach out and set up meetings with external partners and customer communities. I will ask that you work through Cassie. Cassie is managing my unmanageable calendar at this point. So if you can work with her to try to, she'll reach out to you and ask you what's the best time for you. Commissioner Hovell's already talked about, you know, it's easy if you want to do it before or after a commission meeting. I do ask that they be in person if possible. We can also try to coordinate those if I'm asking commissioners to come to external meetings, customer community meetings. You know, we can try to find time to do those at the same time. Maximize the schedule and the hours in the day. So with that, I think I will end unless others have questions.
Okay, so one thing I had talked with Eric about, he brought it up here, was that maybe some customer communities to have a commission member present. I know he had a meeting scheduled yesterday. He had to cancel it because he was ill. But Commissioner Lytle was going to attend with Verona. I might attend McFarland and Fitchburg. But there are a lot of customers. Ken, you might be asked for, say, DeForest or Wanakee. But we have like 23. Well, I don't know how many of them are towns, Power 4. But I'm just wondering, we may have to try, depending on how it goes, and if some of these, if you want a commissioner each, we might have to divide, like a Madison commissioner go to a small city, right, or a town. So just keep that in mind, because it would spread the workload around instead of 3 cities and villages appointees attending like 20-some or 18-some, or dividing, 9 or 6 each or whatever it would work.
Yeah, and if I don't mind asking, one of those things for me is also, multiple communities at one meeting, if we want to do that. As somebody, just logistically speaking, who lives on the north side, if Wanakee, Windsor, DeForest, Westport wanted to sit in a room together, I understand there's political reasons that might not want to happen right now. But But if there's other, opportunities for groups to meet in that way, you know, I am interested in hearing about that. So,
Yeah, I
thank
think you could reach out to them and see if they're, because it would certainly cut down on the number of meetings. You could group like East Side too, you know, Cottage Grove, Garland, Nona.
Eric, I wanted to ask, I'll keep it to a clarifier for today, but the, I don't know the title right, so I don't know if I caught what you said right. The position you formerly held in the executive office when there were 3 total, you're thinking of not refilling. Is that what you said?
Yes, at this time, so in the executive office, we have 3 positions. We have the executive director position, the deputy executive director position, which Bill holds, and then also we had the district principal engineer position. So at this time, my goal is to actually just leave things the way they are. One of the first-year goals for the commission is doing organizational alignment and strategic visioning, and I do not want to make decisions on those type of positions without knowing where the district needs to go for business function. You know, positions are at a premium. There actually isn't a open position for that either. You know, as a commission, chose not to backfill that position with the budget. So the opportunity is still there to take our time and understand which positions would be needed or what kind of alignment we'll have as a district.
That makes sense. No, and I'm probably foreshadowing conversations for over these next few months, but the position you held previous to that has also never been filled. And right? I mean, that's not a misunderstanding the way this all worked. The concern, of course, is Eric's got a new job. Eric can't do the old job. You mentioned Eric and Alan, but so we'll be talking about this over the next several months, I'm sure. just thanks for the clarification. That helps me understand where we're at.
Okay, thanks, Eric. That will move us to capital project update. Lisa?
On here? Okay, great. Thank you. I'm Lisa Coleman. I'm the Director of Engineering, and I'm here this morning to present a capital projects update. It works this time. Never works when I do it. Is it operator error? Oops, that's going back. Okay. Push the red one, Lisa. Okay, very good. So, just a preview here of what I'm going to talk a little bit about today. You might recall from my last update that we revamped this format just a little bit so that it more closely aligns with kind of the format of the CIP document, so that it's easier to kind of look at the CIP and then look at these updates and sort of track progress of things. It's further updated now to reflect the 2025 CIP. So without further ado, what I'll do first here is talk about kind of projects, all the projects that are in kind of the various stages, planning, design, construction, and then do a quick little recap of just some stuff we completed in 2024 and bids received in 2024, and then my favorite part always is the project highlights. So I'll have a few of those at the end. I may, in the interest of time, pare that down a little bit today since there's been a pretty full agenda this morning. All right. So in planning, we've got, you'll see there, we've got them divvied up according to the categories in the CIP also. So we've got 2 at the treatment plant, 3 interceptor projects, and then 1 pumping station force main project. So again, I won't talk in detail about everything, but they're coded sort of by the stoplight colors there. The red ones are ones that we're not actively working on just yet. Remember, it's just the beginning of the year, so of note here, we have the heat and power is going along nicely. The biosolids facility plan, we issued an RFP for that already last fall and received proposals in December. So we've got interviews with consultants for that next week. And then you'll see an item coming to the commission, I think the first meeting in February on that, for a selection of a consultant there. For the interceptors, And pumping stations, those are again red just because mostly it's the beginning of the year and we're not yet actively working on those. Also, you might recall there's a couple of rehab projects there. You might recall that we moved construction of those rehab projects out to later years to accommodate adding in the Nine Springs Valley Interceptor Phase 2 project. So, and you know, it's not so surprising that we're pausing on planning on those a little bit. And then the last one there is under interceptors, the West Interceptor on Regent. That's mostly just a project that we're at this point sort of tracking with the City of Madison because it's related to traffic control for a number of their other projects, Regent Street, the BRT project, Park Street, whatever. So there's a whole bunch of projects there that are related. So we're coordinating with City of Madison, and the schedule on that will better unfold as the city's schedule moves. And then the last one, the crosstown force main air release valve saddle tap replacement, that's a maintenance project. We're intending to start working on that in the quarter 3 of this year. All right, moving on to InDesign. We've got a lot of projects listed here, lots in the hopper that we're working on, and then there's even a couple more that aren't on the slide that didn't fit there, but again, the stoplight colors are sort of indicative of how it's going. I'll just talk quickly about a little bit about these. So for liquid processing phase 2, if you look in the CIP, remember you'll see 6 sub-projects there. Since we bundled those at a commission action last fall, you'll recall doing that. Going forward, I'm just going to talk about that as a single project. So just want to kind of call your attention to, if you're looking in the CIP, you'll see 6 projects, and then, you know, looking on these updates, you'll see 1 project. So they didn't go away, they just rolled together into one. So, and I'll provide a little bit of a project update on that project in a few slides here, but in general, that project's proceeding well. For Lagoon Dikes, that's yellow. We're making good progress there on planning for that flooding resilience project. It's yellow just because it's a complicated regulatory project with, as you can imagine, with it being a closed Superfund site. Dryer and seating modifications, that's a project here at the plant in the Streetfight Recovery Building. It's red because we're not actively working on it yet, but we expect to start this quarter. I think we have a kickoff meeting planned at the beginning of February on that one. For Lower Badger Mill Creek Phase 6, we're making good progress there with real estate. We talked about that last meeting in closed session. We're on track there. And we expect to put that project out to bid late this month. That I'm still showing as yellow just because it's going to be a challenging project with the alignment there, but that's proceeding well. The West Interceptor Rehab, that's a pipe lining project along University Avenue. That is actually posted for bid today. That is a construction project planned for next summer. That'll be an interesting project for us, a little different because we are, because of the city's concerns with traffic control and Metro Transit's concerns. Like, we won't be digging up the corridor, but we will have to have a lot of traffic control setups and active traffic lanes there. So we've been working closely with those entities, and we're planning to build that project essentially at night. So that'll be a unique one for us. So we'll see how that goes. Let's see, the Northeast Interceptor Truax extension, that's shown as red. We're not actively working on that. We've sort of paused. We shuffled that around in the CIP, you might recall too, just to focus on getting the West Interceptor done. So construction for the Truax is pushed out a little later, so we're not in crunch time with that one just yet there. And then you'll see, see what's next on the list there. The Nine Springs Valley capacity improvements, phase 1 and 2. Those are items on the agenda earlier today. So those are moving along. We've got consultants selected for those, and we'll start proceeding with those. The Southeast Interceptor relocation at the Yahara River, that is a project that we are working with a DOT project on. So we have to move some of our facilities to get out of the way for basically widening the bridge over the Yahara River. And so we are coordinating with a number of folks on that project that are all right in that same area, of course. So there's Town of Dunn Sanitary District, DOT, Kegonsa Sanitary District, Village of McFarland, all need to coordinate together on that project. So we are working through that, and we are expecting that we'll all have our 90% plans done this summer as per the DOT's schedule there. So, and then down at the bottom into pumping station and force mains, pumping station bar screens. That's essentially a project at pumping stations 2, 7, 8, and 11. So those are the stations that have force mains that come directly to the plant. Those are basically to put in screening equipment at the pump stations, essentially to protect our equipment at headworks. So those are yellows. We're starting those a little later than we would have liked, but we did just have a kickoff meeting on that earlier this week. So that is underway. And then the last one that I'll mention that's not listed on the slide that we're actively working on now is the design of the manhole rehab on the old West Interceptor. So that is working with Strand on that, and that's going well. Right. On to construction. Wow, the colors showed up different on the slide here than they show up on my sheet. So I'll have to make sure I talk about the right colors here. So here's a map with our current major construction projects, and not in the color on my sheet, but in kind of green there are the 4 projects that are underway at the plant. And then there are 3 interceptor projects. Those are showing in blue. So the one is on the far north side in the Wanakee Westport area. One of those is along the University Avenue corridor in Shorewood. The West Interceptor Shorewood Relief is that one. And then the third blue interceptor project is a rehabilitation lining project that's on Highway 51 north of McFarland and south of the Beltline, so over to the southeast side. That is another one that's in conjunction with that same DOT project. It's a separate one from the one I just talked about, but it's related to the same DOT project, and it's a lining rehab project. And then the three red projects are the pumping station force main projects. So the 2 in the lower down to the southwest are the pumping station 17 related projects, the force main relief phase 2, and then also the actual rehab at pumping station 17. And then the other pumping station that's under construction is pumping station 4. So that's on John Nolan Drive, right in the middle there, just south of Lake Monona. So here's a little more information about those projects listed with the stoplight colors. So again, I won't talk about everything, but I'll kind of hit the highlights here. So for the treatment plant projects, the first 3, we haven't started active construction yet, but we're in the submittal phase. The electrical service equipment I'm showing in yellow because we're expecting long lead times for that electrical equipment. However, all the major submittals are approved for that, so that's good news. Keeps things moving on getting that stuff ordered and in. I will have a project highlight on that project in a few slides here. For the flow splitter project, we expect to see construction starting up on that this spring here at the plant. And then that last project under treatment plan is the 2021 treatment plant HVAC improvement projects. That's substantially complete. We're wrapping up a couple of punch list things there, but all that equipment is in service, and so we should be seeing that coming through commission for approval hopefully soon. For the interceptor projects, I'll have a highlight on the Northeast Interceptor Wanakee in a few slides. I'm showing that as yellow. Up until last week, I would have shown that as green. That's been going very well. We're making great progress, but we've run into some issues there with bedrock. So I'll share a little bit more about that in a moment. The second listed interceptor project is the Southeast Interceptor lining project. And that has already, I mentioned that a second ago, that's already down in McFarland area. That's been awarded to Visu Sewer, but hasn't started up yet because we're coordinating with the DOT's traffic control. So when they start up, we'll start up. But we're all contracts ready to go there. So let's see, for the West Interceptor Shorewood Relief, that pipe, if you remember, is kind of in 2 different segments. There's one segment right along Shorewood Boulevard, right by the Shorewood pool running parallel to the railroad tracks there. And then the second pipe is sort of near where the on and off ramps for Campus Drive and Highland are. So there's kind of two discrete pieces of that pipe work. Most of the pipe is already in for the part along Shorewood. And then the other piece will kind of start up in the spring. That one I'm showing yellow. We got started further later into the fall than we had hoped because we were delayed by a extremely lengthy review on a railroad permit. So, and I'll talk the pictures from the pictures on the right are from that project. I'll talk about those in just a second. Let's see. And then for the pumping station projects, pumping station 17 and pumping station 4, I'm showing those as yellow just because schedule-wise, those are, you know, heavy equipment-related projects where we're still seeing, you know, equipment delays for those sorts of projects. But they're moving along. Pump station 17, force main relief, that's green. The contractor Manger did great work on that in the last year, and they got about 70% complete on that project. They then shut down during the growing season because the next phase is sort of through wetlands, and so our wetland permit stipulated that we shut down during the growing season. And so they have just recently remobbed this month to finish that project up. So they're installing dewatering wells and creek crossings and that kind of stuff, and they'll get going on installing pipe later this month. So that's the last kind of piece of that pipe that's like west of PB is the rest of that project. So, all right. I think that's the highlights. Oh yeah, I was going to tell you about the pictures. So those are always my favorite part of these presentations. So that just sort of shows you the tight quarters that we're working on for the West Interceptor Shorewood Relief Project. So you can kind of see the picture at the top. You can see the train in the background. So there's the train. And then where the Bobcat is sitting, that's bike path. And then there's a oak tree that we saved right there with the green banner around it. And then there's our pipe trench. And then to the right of that is the pool deck for the Shorewood pool. So pretty tight quarters. So we're actually under, in that area, we're actually under the deck of the Shorewood pool, which we'll have to replace, obviously. And then the picture at the bottom is the same, pretty close to the same area, looking west. So you can see the Shorewood pool shade structures are the little things you see sticking up on the right, right there. So tight quarters there. All right. Shifting gears a little bit, just kind of looking back to 2024 and what did we complete in 2024? We had 5 projects that we completed construction of last year. Those are projects that you saw come through the commission with the acceptance of work resolutions. So, and again, those are just the big ones. Those are the ones that my team has handled. Obviously, there are many other maintenance type projects that you probably saw come through that aren't all listed here. And then as far as the pictures over to the right, the top is pumping station 14. So that's located over off Wheeler Road by the Cherokee Marsh on the north side. And we obviously had a lot of work inside the building. And then this picture is just kind of showing all the, it got reseeded and the parking lot got repaved and all of that stuff. So there, it's all buttoned up at the end. And then the picture at the bottom is, I always love a cool aerial photo. So that picture is our, actually the building where we are right now. We're in the maintenance facility there, and you can see the, on the left side of the building over the garage, there's all the brand new solar arrays that we put in with part of with the maintenance facility rooftop solar panel project. So that's a smaller dollar value project, but a cool project, and you always got to show a cool aerial photo when you have one. All right, 2024 bids. So as far as bids last year, this slide here shows some of the major projects we bid last year. Again, those are the ones that my team handled. Not every single maintenance bid was on here. There was a whole bunch more than that. But of these ones, of the ones my team handled, there is a grand total here that's a $35.6 million in construction contracts bid last year. So a lot of work we got going on. All right, and then on to a few highlights. So the first project I wanted to provide a little highlight on was Liquid Processing Improvements Phase 2. So at our November 14th meeting, when Kaylin and I last presented on this, there was a question that Commissioner Bookland asked that I wanted to provide a little bit of follow-up on. She was requesting more specifics on the energy efficiency improvements from the project. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about that. So first, you might recall that the big picture reason for the project is really about addressing increased loadings to the plant. So things like BOD, biochemical oxygen demand, handling, increasing loadings to the plant. You might also recall that our plan is to switch to a hybrid BNR system. So BNR stands for Biological Nutrient Removal System. That's essentially the aeration systems that you see. And what we've selected is that hybrid system, which can run at low DO, and DO stands for dissolved oxygen, or higher DO. And so with that background, as far as energy savings, we're expecting that when we can run in low DO, energy usage will be reduced about 18% from the current process. Or if we need to do an operational switch to high DO, then that reduction is more like 7 to 11%. So I wanted to give you a little bit more of some of the whys behind that energy reduction and get into the nuts and bolts a little bit here. So the first is blower selection. So we plan to use high-speed turbo blowers, which have magnetic bearings. They're more efficient than the other type that we were considering. And then in addition to the actual blower selection, there's also the blower configuration and the controls. So we're planning to make some changes to the configuration during the project. The first change is, rather than, you might recall that the plant is set up so that the east plant and the west plant are essentially separate plants, more or less. But the first change we're making with the project is we plan to have the east plant, the aeration systems, cross-connected for the two plants. And so that basically, adding that piping allows us to run the east plant with the west plant blowers and the west plant with the east plant blowers, vice versa. The main reason for that has to do with resiliency. So in a nutshell, it allows us to have less spare blowers around, but yet still be able to run all of the plant with less blowers. But it also does lead to some energy efficiency, making that cross connection. So that's one thing. Another change in the configuration we're planning to do is to have separate low pressure blowers for what I'll call the less air use things, without getting too technical here, but some of these things are essentially keeping solids from settling out, mixing, things like that in headworks, in the primary influent channels, in the west mixed liquor channel. So right now, those functions are run off the same large process blowers that we use for the aeration tanks, but they actually those uses take less air than the aeration tanks, so it makes sense to supply that air with smaller dedicated blowers. So, and then the last change I'll touch on is using a different kind of diffuser. So the diffuser down at the right, you can see that's a picture of the silicone tube diffusers that we plan on using. It's a different kind of diffuser than we have currently. And we're also planning to configure the arrangement a little bit differently. So essentially using, they call it the low energy configuration, but it's essentially more diffusers that supply less air, if that makes sense. And so all of these things, it's a little bit getting into the nuts and bolts here, but I think it's important to just kind of show that it's a whole bunch of little things that you kind of add it together, and that's kind of how you make inroads on these things. So that's a little more of the background behind, where is that energy efficiency coming from. All right. On to the electrical equipment service replacement project. So this project is essentially replacing the critical equipment that's electrical equipment that's adjacent to and inside the effluent building that steps down the voltage from the MG&E substation at the northwest corner of the plant, and that feeds feeds electricity to the entire plant. So currently that project is in construction, and we're working on submittals. We've got all the major equipment submittals complete. We still do expect long lead times. The transformer is fall of this year expected. The switchgear is probably about this time next year. So those are long lead times, but they are actually, believe it or not, about half as long as we were expecting during design. So that's good news. We will be starting construction of a building to house that equipment this spring. And there's also some good news with respect to our kind of coordination with MG&E on this project that I wanted to share. So we've been working with MG&E on a related project of theirs. And because of their project, we were planning to have to reroute the duct banks to our equipment, but we've learned now that we're not going to have to do that. And so that'll save us several $100,000 from what was bid. So that's good news. Also, we've been working with MG&E on how we want to be able to switch between two feeds that feed our plant. So we're comfortable with us being able to manually switch between those two feeds. We're staffed 24/7. We have mechanics, we have electricians. We can, that's the kind of thing we can handle. So us being able to do that manually rather than have that be an automatic function is going to save us some money too. Not selecting the automatic function saves us, basically saves us in our annual utility bill. So that's kind of a service that they can provide that we don't actually need. So that will save us about $75,000 a year in utility bill. So that's good. And then the last thing I wanted to note on this project is that MG&E is working actually on some stuff at the substation itself that will add more resiliency to the grid itself. So basically what that means for us is that if the substation in the corner of the plant goes down, our plant can be fed from other MG&E substations, not just that substation. So that's all an improvement that they are working on. And so that is good news for us, obviously. Yeah.
Right now, you're fed from that current station. You're on two different circuits, but
we still are.
But it's all from that substation.
Correct.
So, right. Okay.
We have two redundant. We have two feeds from that station. So if something goes wrong with one feed, we can switch to the other. But we're all coming off that station. Yep.
You started it, Greg. Commissioner Lytle, I'm just curious, is this going to give us the ability to reduce either the capacity or number of backup generators because of this resiliency, or is that not even an option currently for us for this, what this equipment is going to power or is currently powering?
Eric looks like he wants to answer that, so I'm going to let him.
Yeah, I'm going to answer that. So we had a project that we had MG&E look at backup generators for the substation, and that project's dead. So the idea here is the space that was needed to do the backups, for us to make a decision on what we needed for critical load that they needed to provide, plus the cost for that started to become unreasonable for what we have now. And I guess I'm just going to say that this is why we have good partners. Madison Gas and Electric and us, we worked this out over a couple years, on these project developments. We both spent money trying to figure out the best way to do it, and Lisa just highlighted what the best way was that we came up with. And it didn't cause any space for the district. We didn't have any situations where a generator was sitting uncomfortably close to some of our force mains that come into the plant. So this is a all-in-all win-win.
Right. All right. And then on the Northeast Interceptor Wanakee Extension Capacity Improvement Phase 1, that's a project that's up in the Wanakee Westport area. Sorry, it's a little washed out on the map up there, but the south end, the blue is the pipe, right? And the south end is kind of near the intersection of M and 113. This is a capacity improvement project. The part we have already, we've been making very good progress on getting the pipe in. So the highlighted part over to the east is the part where the pipe is already in. So basically the part that's east of, the pipe that, the highlighted part over there is east of 113. That pipe is mostly in. you can see the picture is showing, it's hard to see, but we're right along 113 there. So you can see the orange barrels on the left are 113, and then the pipe is over in the off to the side, and then you can see the dewatering white wellhead sticking up there along the pipe alignment. RG Houston's been throwing a lot of effort at this and making a lot of progress, working extended hours. We were able to open cut across River Road over the week of Christmas, so that was good. We were trying to time that while the Madison Country Day School that's just up the road was out of session that week, so that was to try to minimize traffic snafus for people there. So thanks to Erin and my team for being out there on Christmas Eve while me and many others were eating cookies. The picture to the lower right is the temporary concrete getting put across River Road that week. RG Houston is hoping to be done with pipe work in June, which would be ahead of schedule, so that's good. But, and here's a big but that's coming up. So the but is that they are currently setting up for the tunnel bore under 113, and they have encountered some competent bedrock that was not indicated in the soil borings. So that is not great news. So the picture there to the bottom left is a little hard to see, but you can see competent bedrock down in the bottom of the picture there. So we're working through how to deal with that. But my guess is that we'll likely have some cost and schedule, probably pretty significant impacts there on cost and schedule. So I will keep you posted on that one. All right. And then I think this is last. Yeah, this is last but not least. So Nine Springs Valley capacity improvements phase 1 and 2. I don't think I'll go into this one in the interest of time and in a great deal of detail. You had a whole bunch of information in your packet today with the cars with regard to those 2 projects. So those will both be starting up. I guess the only thing I will mention is that those emergency repairs, the last one, the emergency repair number 3, we've been calling it, is that's part of the phase 2 of this project. We're hoping to have that completed, fingers crossed, knock on wood, in the next week. They should be hopefully completing that. So hopefully that will all go well, and we will provide an update again as to how the status of that. And I think that's all I had for today, but again, happy to answer any other questions that you might have.
Okay, thank you, Lisa. Anybody have any more questions?
If there was ever any doubt we're in the infrastructure business, I think Lisa put that one to bed.
Yeah. Sure are.
Job security.
Full Employment Act for engineers. Okay, that will take us to regulatory and legal. Paul?
Yes, thank you. In the interest of time, I have one word for you today, and that's PFAS. And just everywhere. Legislature's back in session, and they are going to try and bring PFAS legislation back that was vetoed last session. A lot of effort with that. There are state rules in progress. There are federal rules that came out. Just this week, EPA issued its initial report on PFAS and biosolids. My initial review is that will pose some issues that we'll have to deal with, but we'll digest all of that. And not last but not least, there was an argument at the Wisconsin Supreme Court on DNR's authority over PFAS. So there's all branches of government are involved in this. So we'll continue to monitor that. We've been continuing to work very closely with Marty on stuff that is going on both here and nationally on these issues. And there are 2 other things going on, although are not quite as far along at this point. One is we do anticipate with this next legislative session some additional discussion on the Clean Water Fund, and we'll be continuing to monitor that, hopefully provide additional funding. Heard that there have been some shortfalls, and they're address that. So we're working collaboratively with other entities, including Milwaukee and others on that. And facility planning is a rule that has been in our release a scope statement on that in December. That's a ways off, but something we'll need to monitor. That will affect pretty much everything we do in the way of Lisa's reporting. So we'll continue to monitor that. So that's what's new for today.
Okay, questions? Greg?
This is Commissioner Freeze. Can you go into a little more detail on that facility planning? Is that like the counterpart to CMAR, CMOM? Are they doing something with regard to that? I'm not familiar.
Well, it's updates to NR 110 and 108. So it's all of the basic facility planning, sewer and water, and the whole process by which you get facility plan approval under Chapter 281. How extensive the revisions are going to be, I don't know. Again, they're just at the scope statement standpoint, so we really won't have a good sense of it until it gets a little further.
Okay, anyone else? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on. Future meeting schedule. The next meeting is on the 30th of January. That's in person. I think if you look at the future meeting schedule, you'll see a closed session, not just for Eric, but there's one for possibly Badger Mill Creek. I think they're just a bunch of placeholders going on down in case something happens court-wise or litigation or settlement or whatever. Okay. Any future agenda topics? Other business? And I think it's Ken taking over for Tom.
They're big shoes to fill.
Yeah.
Make a motion to adjourn.
Motion by Commissioner Clark, second by
Commissioner Freeze.
Commissioner Freeze to adjourn. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? None. Motion carries. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you. Bye.
See you, Beth.